Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for October 11th of 2023, and currently we have two main regions that we're going to be going over in today's video. Currently we have a slight risk for Florida and a marginal threat for the Central Plains into the Midwest, extending from Nebraska, southern South Dakota into Iowa and parts of Illinois. As for threats for today, we do have a 5% tornado threat for the slight risk region for Florida. As for our wind threat, we do have a 15% for the slight risk region for Florida, and we have a 5% for Nebraska for the marginal threat in the Central Plains. And as for hail, we do have a 5% hail threat for the marginal threat in the Central Plains into the Midwest. Taking a look at our weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do, starting off with a slight risk for Florida. We are expected to see that tropical wave, which is a combination of Hurricane Lydia and that area of tropical development that was in the Gulf of Mexico. Those two have conjoined forces into one massive unorganized tropical wave, and it's going to be carrying a lot of the directional shear over from Tropical Storm Lydia and lead to that 5% tornado threat for Florida, and then with some aid from the subtropical jet, some weak veering of the winds would be mostly indicative of a 2% tornado threat, and we should see some directional shear from the subtropical jet to help with that 5% tornado threat. But if we didn't have the veering of the winds or the directional shear left over from Hurricane Lydia, then we would probably be left with a 2% tornado threat, as the veering of the winds in the subtropical jet is overall fairly minimal. But with some of the directional shear from Hurricane Lydia and some aid from the subtropical jet, we should see quite a bit of directional shear to support the threat of a few tornadoes across Florida for today, as well as the threat of damaging winds with some of the storms across Florida as well. And then if we take a look at the marginal threat for the Central Plains into the Midwest, we are currently seeing that trough as it continues to make its way eastward. As of right now, the trough is mostly over the Rockies. However, we are expected to see some early advection into the Central Plains out ahead of that trough, some early advection, with the majority of the trough still being over the Rockies. This should help with some overall weaker thunderstorm development in the Central Plains, but nonetheless, we should still see the threat of some severe thunderstorms in the Central Plains into the Midwest with this marginal threat. And then we should also see a couple snowstorms back towards Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, parts of Idaho, and Montana. Out on the northern and western side of that low pressure system, we are expected to see some snowstorm development, as this trough is really, really strong as of right now, and the trough, as it loops back around with the cold temperatures after the cold front that is attached has already passed through. I think it's somewhere in there. However, as the trough loops back around and the cold front has already passed through, that is definitely going to lead to some snowstorm development on the western side of that low pressure system. So we are definitely expected to see quite a bit of snowfall, not only for today but also for tomorrow as well. So definitely make sure you're planning accordingly to the weather if you live in any of the areas that could potentially be affected by snowstorms. Taking a look at our dew points, focusing on the slight risk for Florida first, you can see because it is Florida, we are expected to have quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere. For Florida, we are expected to see dew points that could be ranging anywhere from the mid-60s into the mid-70s and possibly into the upper 70s further down south. So we are definitely expected to have quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere, which should lead to quite a bit of instability across this region to help fuel our thunderstorms for today. And then if we take a look at the marginal threat for the Central Plains into the Midwest, we currently have our strong southerly pull out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is leading to some moisture return after the cold front last week has already cleared everything out into the Atlantic Ocean. We still have our strong southerly pull out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is leading to quite a bit of moisture returning to the Central Plains, and the return of instability to help fuel the threat for for severe thunderstorms. Currently, as for our dew points, we are expecting to see dew points that are going to be a little bit more on the weaker side. We are expecting to see dew points that are going to be ranging anywhere from the upper 40s into the low and mid 50s, possibly getting as high as the low and mid 60s. So we are definitely expected to have moisture or instability that's going to be a little bit more so on the weaker side. But we should see instability that should be at least in the triple digits to 1,000s range. Taking a look at our temperatures, I primarily want to be focusing on our widespread temperatures, not only for the snowstorms, but also for the various fronts that we are expected to see attached to this low pressure system. So if we take a look at the central plains and the high plains, you can see our low pressure system. It's a little bit better if you see it at nighttime. You can see our low pressure system is somewhere in there, indicated by the swirling, and then we also have our cold front that is going to be draping down across Nebraska into Kansas and Oklahoma. This cold front is going to progress eastward over the next couple of days into tomorrow, into the rest of Kansas and Nebraska, which is going to be leading to our severe thunderstorm threat for tomorrow. If you don't know already, let me actually go over that really quickly. Currently, for our day 2 outlook, we currently have a slight risk. We have a 2% tornado, or we have a 5% tornado threat. Earlier today, when I checked, it was a 2%. But we do have a 5% for Nebraska, and then we also have a 5% wind threat and a 15% hail threat. So tomorrow we are expected to see the threat of a few tornadoes, hail that could potentially be upgraded to the threat of large hail, and the threat of damaging winds as well. So even though we are still expected to see the threat of some severe thunderstorms for today, we are expected to see a little bit more of a better threat for severe thunderstorms tomorrow. So that is definitely something you want to be watching out for if you live in the affected area, are the severe thunderstorms, not only for today, but also more so for tomorrow. And then, as I did mention, that cold front that you see attached to the low pressure system, as of right now in this current model run, this cold front would have already passed through the Rocky Mountains. You can see significantly colder temperatures out across the Rockies. And then as that trough circles back around that low pressure system, we should see quite a bit of snowstorm development out across the Rockies, leading to tons of snow in the Rockies. But then you can see we also have our warm front attached to the low pressure system, running perpendicular to the cold front, and with the low pressure system attaching those two, we should see a little bit of occlusion, which could help with our severe thunderstorms tomorrow. And then taking a look at our 5% tornado threat for Florida, taking a look at our energy helicity index readings, focusing on the 5% for Florida, you can see that we are expected to have quite a bit of energy helicity index readings. We are expected to have a widespread directional shear and widespread instability that is going to be enough to support the threat for tornadoes. And then across Florida, you can see right underneath a lot of these storms, you can see that we do have a little bit of contamination here, where you're seeing those little areas of significantly stronger energy helicity index readings. There's likely going to be contamination from storms. However, you can see overall widespread, we should definitely see energy helicity index readings that widespread should be indicative and supportive of the threat of a few tornadoes across mainland Florida. Taking a look at our total snowfall, I want to be focusing on the threat for snowstorms across the Rocky Mountains, mainly for Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, parts of Idaho, Montana, and South Dakota, and western Nebraska. Let's take a look at our total snowfall accumulation, which ends at the morning of Thursday on this current model run. By the morning of Thursday, you can see that quite a bit of snow has already fallen across the Rocky Mountains. You can see we are expected to have some total snowfall accumulation readings getting as high as 30 inches in some regions. However, these are most likely going to be on mountaintops. However, widespread in some of the lower regions, we should see anywhere from less than an inch getting as high as 3 to 4 inches. So we are definitely expected to have quite a bit of snowfall across the Rocky Mountains. So as I mentioned previously, you definitely want to make sure that you are planning accordingly to the snowstorms across the Rocky Mountains if you live in the affected region. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.